episode 95. Will Hall from Talk Club Murray. Welcome, Will. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks very much for having me, guys.
No, the record. Awesome. Was there a bit of a delay there with us speaking to you?
I can hear you quickly, and then I'm replying immediately, and there's like a 2-second, maybe a bit more than that, delay on when it's actually coming through to you.
There's just a bit of latency. No worries. We'll make the best of it. Don't worry.
We'll just be conscious of that as we're going forward.
So we were meant to meet up in person a couple of weeks ago, but COVID struck, as it has been for the last couple of years. So thank you very much for giving us an hour of your time.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, it's been one of those, like, it's that busy time of year, and then I took a flight and COVID came down, and it just doesn't seem to go away. But anyway, here we are. It's all good.
So the first kind of question that I had was, obviously this is something that got a bit of traction in the press and journal. Like, we've been wanting to kind of talk about something along mental health lines and support for the last couple of months, and when I came across the article, I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to talk to you. How did the kind of, why, first of all, did you feel like starting something like this? What was the kind of trigger for that? And then from there, how did you kind of grow that into what you have at the moment?
It's a good question. My background is that I moved up to Scotland 2 years ago. I moved up from, as you can tell from my accent, I came up from the south of England. My issue when I first moved up was that I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any support network. I'd moved into a new job in a new place, and it was all just quite a lot, you know? So, I'm sorry, I can hear myself in the background, so I'm going to take my headphone out. I'm just going to talk, and then I'll put it back in when I finish. But yeah, I moved up to Scotland 2 years ago, and basically I used to be a professional athlete, and when I left sport is like this hot pot of male, well, my sport particularly, male figures that didn't really talk about their emotions and stuff like that. And then when I left sport, I was kind of left high and dry, where I'd moved away from all of my friends. I'd moved away from that kind of lifestyle that I'd had for a long time, and I was dumped into a new environment where I didn't know anyone. I didn't really have much of a routine. And if I had had an opportunity to, like, I don't know, talk to people, discuss my own mental health, discuss my own mental issues, then I know that I would have really benefited from it. So my brother-in-law lives in Bristol, and he was a member of a talk club. So Talk Club was set up by a group of friends, one of whom committed suicide, and they had decided that had their friend had the opportunity to discuss, he may still be with us. So they set up this man-centric group that enabled guys to basically sit down and chat. It's not counselling. It's not it's not therapy. Although Talk Club does offer therapy, it's not targeted to be that. It's like an opportunity for just guys to meet up and have a conversation. So anyway, my brother-in-law put me in touch with them. I got in touch with the with the instructors, and then I went from there. Really, I set up one in Elgin, and I went along. I kind of had advertised on Facebook for maybe like 2 months, and I hadn't had anyone turn up, not a sausage, for like 2 months. It was just me sitting in Elgin Football Club like a plum, waiting for someone to come and chat to me. And then Press and Journal picked it up, and it kind of went from there. It suddenly kind of climbed. I had maybe 8 or so inquiries in the space of about 2 days during Press and Journal, and then BBC Scotland took it on, and they interviewed me, and it did gain a bit of traction. That's kind of plateaued now, but we've got a little group of about, well, on the books about 15 people, but in practice maybe eight or so people consistently turning up. I'd like it to be more, but it's tricky with, you know, everything else going on.
Having looked a little bit into Talk Club online and things they do, and a bit about yourself, Will, one of the questions I see popping up is, how are you out of 10? Can you just explain a little bit about this question and how it relates to Talk Club?
So, as I mentioned, the Talk Club ethos is is all man centric, not in a misogynistic way, but me myself, I find that binary things are quite like, we're very used to saying, yeah, I'm good, or oh, I'm having a bit of a shit day, or whatever. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on this, but we're very binary. And so Talk Club is all about being quite binary. It's about putting a number.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want, my friend.
And saying, and asking yourself, how are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Because in a workplace, like all the time, and it was the same with me when I was competing, and no matter where I've worked, you go into the office and you say, hey, how you doing? You say, yeah, I'm all right. How are you? Yeah, I'm all right. And you move on with your day. But if you stop and you say, actually, Ryan, how are you out of 10? It forces you to sit down and reflect inwardly, like, actually, I'm probably about a 5 today, like I've had an argument with my girlfriend, or I'm not doing so well financially, or whatever it is. And actually it forces you to reflect a little bit. And it's one of those things that once you start building it into your everyday routine, like it becomes kind of second nature. Like nowadays, my girlfriend will ask me, Will, how are you actually doing out of 10? And I think about it. And the big thing with Talk Club is that it's a bit of a cop-out to select 7, because 7 is like the middle ground. Everyone always says 7. So, if you decide where you are within that scale, it helps ground you in it. And from there, you can choose to discuss it further, or you can work out like, okay, well, why am I feeling a 4? What can I do to pull myself out of that, rather than just saying, yeah, I'm all right. So actually, I mean, an interesting perspective would be to ask you guys, how are you doing out of 10 today?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah. Are we talking mentally or physically, Will?
Mentally, I would say. Mentally.
Mentally. Yeah, mentally. A few factors today. I'd say I'm about a 6 today. Yeah. It's a weekend. I've had a bit of family time today. Good things. Been a stressful week at work. Other things have kind of brought it down, stopped it being a little bit higher. Ryan?
I would probably say I was about a 7, and then the technical issues came in. That reduced me to a 4 for a brief period. But on a serious note, probably about a 5. And I mean, the reason that I give for that is I've just stopped smoking. And I'm quite bad for like getting imposter syndrome and things like that, and kind of having distorted thinking of that I needed that to have like any kind of confidence and get through kind of not challenging times, but like social times and stuff that kind of brings anxiety along with it and that. So I would probably say I'm going through a kind of process of separating myself from that kind of distorted thinking. So I'll go with a 5.
How are you
That's
out of
really
10 today, Will?
I'm pretty good. I'd probably say I'm about maybe an 8. I've had a good day. I went for a park run. The sun's out. I've been working hard. But I would say about an 8.
Yeah, that's good.
So how quickly did it go from... Well, actually, I'll rephrase the question. Do you think the kind of non-attendance to begin with, was that like a promotion thing in general, or do you think there was also like a level of hesitancy there from men to kind of come forward and reach out for this type of support?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm going to take my headphone out again so I can't hear myself. But
yeah. If you want, you can just take the headphones out permanently and change the setting if it works better for you.
Oh yeah, it's only because I don't want to be able to hear myself. Oh, that's all right. Can you guys hear me okay now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Can we hear you perfectly?
I'm just going to try and ignore myself. I'll just chat. So I don't know. I think it's a combination of them both. I think that I used social media to promote it, which was okay. Like spamming Facebook, spamming Instagram, like that only gets you so far. The thing is that I think there is a reticence, particularly in blokes, to like take that initial step, because fucking hell, it's quite scary to go into a new group of people that you've never met before and open up emotionally about how you're feeling about stuff. So I think there is that reticence. I think there's especially that reticence in guys. I think that we are pretty bad. Like as a kid, if you're feeling emotional, I mean, when I was growing up, I was told to man up, and like it's not a done thing to be emotional and to discuss how you're feeling about stuff, you know. So yeah, I think that was probably the first thing. But the big thing about Talk Club is to just encourage people that it's okay. You don't have to come to every single session. That working on your mental fitness is an ongoing process. That we've all been in the same position. So one of the things that I will do is before a Talk Club meeting, I'll get there 20 minutes early. So if anyone new comes along, they're not faced with 8 guys that they've never met before. They're faced by me looking like a tit standing outside of Elgin Football Club, rather than like that big group of people. And I think the other thing that diffuses that anxiety is the fact that we try and do an activity alongside it. Now, the activity is normally just like walking around the park at the moment. But I would like to be able to expand it to offer more things, because I think that certainly for me, the best I am at talking about my emotions is when I am doing an activity. That could be walking, it could be running, it could be cycling or whatever. Cycling's a great example. Like blokes go on a cycle ride and they'll cycle for hours, and what starts off as a bit of chit chat about how your week's been quickly turns into actually quite like bigger conversations. So that's the purpose of what I want to run out of Talk Club, and that's part of the reason why I think it started to build a bit of traction.
Obviously, like with like keeping confidentiality and stuff like that of the people that attend Talk Club, what kind of barriers do you feel like men kind of have for reaching out to this kind of support? And has anyone kind of revealed like whatever they maybe were thinking of? I didn't feel like I could do this to begin with.
It's interesting because I'm quite privileged. In fact, I'm very privileged. Like I've come from a my parents are still together. I came from a white middle class background. I'm not divorced. I don't have estranged children. Like, I'm really lucky. So my anxieties and my issues have stemmed from other things unrelated. And we are all coming from different backgrounds. You know, we've got guys that are divorced. We've got guys that have got mental health issues. We've got some guys that just want to come along because they want to meet like-minded guys. So we've had a whole host of guys that have checked in at a 3 and then checked out at an 8. So that's the thing. So we'll do a check-in at the beginning of a session and we'll do a check-out at the end. And that's a way of people trying to draw a link between the fact that they've attended and they've done an activity with friends, and hopefully they see that improvement. But we've had guys check in at really low numbers and check out at really high numbers, and that could be to do with all sorts of stuff. We've had, guys that have, kids that can't see them, or ex-wives that are being difficult, or whatever it might be. So there's no, and then there's little old me that sits somewhere. I'm fairly constantly middling, but I have my own issues. I worry about finances. I worry about the future. So there's no specific level at which you should start attending. A bit like working on your body when you go to the gym. Like, you've got to work on your mental fitness. You've got to work on talking about stuff with people.
It's something that's pretty daunting to begin with, right? But once it's actually said, it almost kind of like that monster you've built up in your mind kind of maybe not disappears, but it certainly becomes a less intimidating prospect, right? The kind of getting over the first time doing it.
I think one of the big strengths of Talk Club is because it's a group of strangers to all intents and purposes. Like, they don't know your background. They don't know your history. They don't know what you've been through. So the only stuff they know is what you choose to tell them, right? So we've had guys that have been nervous because they thought they might know someone there, or that someone might judge them for it. But actually, the fact that no one knows them is what makes it quite liberating. Because I can go there, and because it is confidential, unbiased, we're not there to offer advice or criticism or anything like that. Like, guys can come along to it, they can say what they've been going through. Maybe someone might have been through something similar and can offer, a bit of life experience. But that daunting aspect of like it being new and scary can be overcome just by a sense of perspective, I think. I think I've answered your question there. I think I went a bit of a roundabout way.
No, you've done perfectly, mate.
Do you want to speak a bit more about some of your own personal experiences with mental health, Will?
Yeah. I don't know, really. So So as I said, I was I was an international athlete. I used to be a rower. I rowed since I was about 13, and then I quit when I was 24. So, and in my last 4 years, I'd been in a program where I'd represented Great Britain. I'd trained kind of 5 days a week. I'd been living with and training with my best friends all the time. And then suddenly, like end of 2017, I quit and I moved back home because I was fresh out of university, and I was back in the same place where I'd kind of grown up, but none of my friends from uni were there. They were all still training. They were all still going through that same stuff, and I was just left high and dry. And I suddenly got left with this lack of direction, you know, like I'd spent so much time training that I hadn't learned any experience in the career that I wanted to go down. And then I was back in the position where I was like, I didn't have a purpose. So I struggled then. I think I was a bit depressed then. I've never gone down the road of getting diagnosed. And that's one of those things that guys, we're not very good at. Like we just say, oh, we're a bit sad or whatever. Like my coping mechanism was to throw myself into an activity. So like I might get really into running, or I might get really into healthy eating or cooking or whatever it might be, rather than actually facing the issue, the like problem behind it. And then, so I kind of bimbled along like that for maybe a year or so. And then I moved up to Scotland. And then it all kind of happened again. You know, suddenly I'd found myself this routine where I had known people and I'd been working in a job that I liked doing. And then I moved up to Scotland and it was all over again. Like I didn't know anyone. I was in an alien environment. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know where I was. And it all kind of bubbled up again. So, and that manifests itself in like fairly erratic behaviors, like spontaneously thinking like, well, I'm going to go and buy a dog, or I'm going to go and look at houses, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. Because you try and, for me, I tried to control what I could control because I felt out of control. Do you know what I mean? Like you try and control your fitness, or you try and control what you own or what you do because the other parts of your life feel a bit loose. So that was really my struggle, you know, like, I've never been suicidal, but I think my sadness, as I want to put it, like I think that probably was a depression, but I've never been diagnosed by it, and it always feels a bit, oh, woe is me, like poor old me, my friends don't live with me, type thing. But everyone has their own issues, and I think that's important to be able to reflect on. Like I have it pretty lucky, but a lot of people have a lot worse.
Yeah,
but it doesn't make my issues any less important, if that makes sense, at least to me.
Yeah, 100%. I would probably say it's unique to everyone, right? Everyone's going to be different in how things come up and how we react to things, right? Like you saying there that you kind of dive into something. Would you say that's almost, I don't want to say having like an avoidance, but would that be something that you would kind of have done in the past, and obviously now being a bit more kind of open to maybe talking about what's going on for you at the moment?
A therapy session here, but but yeah, I think you're probably right. You know, like I think when I left university, I was fairly. I really do feel like I should be lying on a couch here and talking to you guys, but I think when I left university, I think I was fairly immature. I think I didn't have a huge amount of life experiences. Like I think I had a great time when I was at uni, but I didn't really know how to control the emotional side of me, and I didn't think it was okay to talk about it because I think that I was around guys that didn't talk about it, that told you to man up or called you a little bitch or just made a joke out of it. You know, like we kind of grew up in the same. I'm assuming I'm 29. You guys probably about the same age as me, but like we grew up in this environment where you know, it was frowned upon to discuss your emotions. It was frowned upon to talk about that. And I think we're much better, especially post-COVID, at talking about mental health. And so I think my coping mechanism of like throw myself into things was an avoidance strategy, was a way of not just forget about it. You know, like if I'm sweating or if I'm hurting or if I'm, you know, distracted with something else, then I'm not thinking about that issue. And in turn, you just push it down like a good little boy, and you forget about it and you man up. And that's the problem, right?
Yeah. And you know that manifests itself more and more and more, and it actually makes the issue worse, right? Trying to ignore it, trying to avoid it, and if anything, it does the opposite effect, as it dominates your thinking more and more and more the more you try to push it away, right? Like, from my personal experience anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it pushes you away from friends, it pushes you away from family, because you have these issues and they're sat deep inside of you, and they manifest themselves in, for me, I would become quite like solitary. Like, I'd go off and do something by myself, and I'd go off and climb a load of mountains by myself, and no one would hear from me for a few days. And that's not really a healthy way of doing things. Some people might turn to drugs. They might go off on a bender for 4 days, and might not hear from them, because there's actually something going on below the surface that they're not able to or willing to talk about. And I think that, you know, a lot of issues can be solved by just discussing.
Mm. What you mentioned the phrase there. What do you make of the term "man up"?
I think it's a toxic masculinity type thing. I think it comes from it's a hangover from, you know, wartime. Women had their role, men had their role, and now I'm not in a position to talk about the former, but the latter I can talk about. You know, like, I think that blokes are told from a very, very early age, you know, don't cry, don't talk about your emotions. If you're crying, then you need to man up, you need to grow up. Otherwise, you know, when I was growing up, if you were showing emotional, you were gay, or you were a sissy, or you were, you know, you're being a little girl's blouse, or all these phrases is all like, it compounds itself, you know, like that was what it was like when I was at school. That was even what it was like when I was at university. And I think it still goes on, you know, like I work with kids now, and it still goes on, you know, boys, I'll give you an example. If I take out a group of primary kids, let's say P6s, I take them to the woods. They're in an environment. I'm a bushcraft instructor, I should explain. That's why I'm taking them to the woods.
Yeah.
I'm taking them to the woods. I'm teaching them bushcraft. The kids are in a new, scary environment. If one of the boys breaks down and cries, they tend to take themselves off, and that you'll find themselves like hidden away, like crying,
not let it be seen.
wrong. Mm-hmm. And they don't want to admit to their peers that they've been crying. Whereas girls, they're very able to, and it's very accepting that when one of them cries, all of their friends crowd around them. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? And I think that, you know, from primary school, and like your most formative years, you're told it's expected that boys don't cry. Boys don't need to be comforted. Boys do their own self-soothing. And I think, from my perspective, I think that there's a balance, right? Like, kids have got to learn how to look after themselves, yes, but they've got to be able to talk about it. I didn't talk about emotions with my dad. I didn't talk about emotions with my mum, and then it manifests itself later on at feeling a bit like having this anxiety at the level of, is it okay to talk about this stuff? Am I going to get laughed at? Am I going to get poked fun at for saying, actually, I'm a bit crap today, guys? But I will say that I think that's changing nowadays. I do think that people are better. Blokes are better.
Certainly getting better. The word mental illness is also another word that's kind of thrown about as well. I'm just kind of going to go back to the word illness in general. Why do you think people treat mental illnesses different to different illnesses? Because if you were sick, you would get medication to make yourself better. You know, if you had some sort of cancer or something, you would get some sort of treatment. Why does it take so long for people to get help for their own mental health?
Well, you're putting me on the spot here. I don't know. I think a combination of things. I think maybe that it doesn't manifest itself, or we don't see it manifesting itself in like physical symptoms. So, you know, if you have cancer, for example, maybe there's a physical symptom that you're starting to pick up on, and so you go and seek help for it. If you break your leg, you know, like there's a physical symptom, you physically hurt, you need to go and seek help. Whereas because mental health is one of these things that bubbles along below the surface, we don't think about it. You know, we don't pay much attention to it. We think of it as that's just us. And so I think people are reticent to like give it too much attention. And I mean, I've never done therapy. I've never gone to go and see someone for my mental health. I know plenty of people that have and said that it's the best thing they've ever done, but I've never felt like I should. because, and I suppose in part, it still feels like an admission of weakness, an admission that there's something wrong with me. But I think that that's probably why people are less keen to go and seek out help, because they think that they can self-medicate, as it were. You know, like my way of self-medicating is by throwing myself into an activity or distracting myself rather than facing the issue. You know, in the same way as, you know, if you've got a dodgy knee, maybe you limp or a little bit, you put more weight on the other side to try and rectify your dodgy knee. You try and fix the problem yourself rather than going to go and see someone and actually fix your knee. In the same way as if you've got anxiety or mental health issues, rather than fixing those issues, you suppress them or you distract yourself with them. Does that make sense?
That's
Yeah.
that's a good answer. Thank you.
And I think it's, you kind of said it there in the previous answer about kind of, I don't want to say putting masculinity or femininity on emotions, right? But that is basically what happens a lot of the time, right? People kind of automatically see crying as a feminine emotion, where you know masculinity in its kind of form's been the kind of stereotypical lifting weights and eating protein. You know what I mean? Like there's that kind of caricatures of both sides, where especially the emotional side, that's just like a human thing, right? There is no masculinity, femininity behind that. It's not in relation to any of those things. It's just a natural human emotion and a way of expression, where keeping it all in is always going to be a negative, right? Because it's almost like a pressure, whether it be on the brain and probably even stuff like organs and stuff like that, not being able to kind of release this tension, right? It can never be good having that kind of energy just pent up all the time.
Yeah.
So I think it's a
no,
very
I couldn't agree
important.
more.
In terms of,
sorry, you go.
I was just going to ask, like, you said like you've obviously never been to kind of seek professional help yourself or anything. Do you think it's a part of, you just think it's never gotten that bad, or do you think there's like a side to it of that kind of, for a lot of the same reasons that some people might feel hesitant to come to Talk Club, right? That kind of taking that step, I guess.
I think the reason I've never gone to go and see someone is, well, finance. I sometimes think. I think it feels like therapy is behind this, you know, locked door where if you can afford it, you can go and talk to someone. Mm-hmm. To be honest, I've also felt that it is, I don't know. I think there's probably stuff that, you know, I don't want to go and talk to someone else about. Like even now, and I'm someone that's fairly okay with discussing my emotions. There's still stuff like I want to deal with myself rather than unpacking with someone else. And maybe given time and given more Talk Club and given more mental growing from me, like maybe I'll be more prepared to talk about that kind of stuff. And it's not like there's some deep-rooted trauma in me, but it's like, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I can probably manage myself. I know what works for me, I know what I can do to help myself mentally, and so I don't feel like I am deserving of a therapist to sit down and ask me questions on my mental health. What I would much rather do is spend time with the people that I love and spend time with the people that I care about, like Talk Club, and discuss the issues in a more kind of free-flowing and open way, and hopefully that will make me more able to do something like that in the future. I also feel like, you know, I like I said, I've come from a really nice background with loving parents and a good family and a good life. So I don't feel like I deserve to go and say, you know, cry, poor old me. My issues are my issues, rightly or wrongly. But I think that's as I say, this feels very much like a therapy session for me. So thanks, guys.
But I think it's really honest though, right? Like the way that you came across, and not a lot of people would kind of admit to that, especially in the position that you're in, where you're seen as you know, a guy that's a founder now of like a support group in the local area. I suppose not through any fault of your own, you're probably seen as a guy that maybe has it all figured out, right? When people come in, and I suppose that maybe is intimidating to them the first time, right? But I'm sure obviously once you get talking to the guys and that, it becomes more of a mental equal playing field. Would that be fair to say?
I think about that sometimes, because we've got guys, you know, maybe you wouldn't go to an Alcoholics Anonymous group if it wasn't run by, say, an ex-alcoholic. You wouldn't go to a drug rehab group if there was someone there that had never experienced drug addiction. And so for me, like, I do sometimes feel like a bit of a cheapskate that I'm there preaching, we need to talk about our mental health. Oh, poor you, you've had a divorce, or poor you, you've tried to commit suicide, and poor me, I was once lonely and I moved to Scotland. Like, it does feel like a bit of a cheapskate move from me. But you're right. I think that what Talk Club is trying to do is not fix people's problems. It is trying to open up an environment where they are able to talk about them. And if they choose to seek help through Talk Club or through their own personal therapist or through talking to their friends and family, then that is the job of Talk Club. And so it doesn't matter that I've not had, intense experiences with mental health and mental illness. It doesn't matter that, because my job is to facilitate a group talking. Who cares if I'm a leader? My job as a leader is just to manage the group when we meet. If other people have had better experiences that resonate with the guys that come along, then that's far more help than me. My job is just to try and stop people talking too long when we're sitting in a circle,
No, it's a personal journey, as we say. Everyone's experience. What might not seem so bad to one person might seem like the end of the world to another person, and vice versa. It's a very personal journey. Can you just talk us through like a typical Talk Club meeting, Will?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we'll meet, at the moment we're meeting at Elgin Football Club every other Wednesday at 5:30. Now I'm looking at the moment to try and move that location. But essentially what we'll do is the guys will meet, we'll have a meeting room, and depending on how many people turn up, we'll do our check-in. So we'll go around the table and we'll just check in, and you can give yourself just a number, or you can give yourself, a bit like yourself, you can give yourself a number and then kind of discuss a bit more about why maybe you're feeling that number. And then at the end of, once you've said your piece, maybe someone might chip in and say, do you know what, I had a similar experience, or maybe I will just say, thanks so much for sharing, and then we'll move on. Once everyone's been around, we'll ask ourselves, within that you can ask yourself what you're grateful for, as well. So what's been good that week? What have you been grateful for that week? Then we'll go off and do our activity. So at the moment, as I say, it's mainly just a walk around Cooper Park. But I would like to try and put together more activities, things like running, cycling, football, frisbee. That's why I'm looking at another location, because I'd love to be able to run it at somewhere like Elgin Sports Centre or the Leisure Centre or something like that, so that we can do activities inside. We'll do an activity for 40 minutes to an hour, and then we'll meet back again in the same room, and we'll go around again and we'll do a check-in. So during that activity, guys are chatting to each other, the group is mingling and mixing, and that's the kind of place where I've found that the issues that have been voiced in the check-in are kind of being discussed with the group, because it's an open forum. Like if you want to go and walk next to someone else and chat to someone else, then that's your opportunity to jump in there.
It's not as intimidating.
Anyway, so then we'll do our
it
check-in
like
at the end, and you'll give yourself a score out of 10, and ask yourself, what are you grateful for, and what are you going to do to work on your mental and or physical health in the next week.
Great.
I just lost my train of thought there. Sorry, I was
That's
just looking
right.
at my.
Sorry, Ryan, I talked over the top of you there. Sorry, mate.
No, it's okay. I thought the delay was still kicking, and I was like, I'm getting paranoid about all this technical.
I'm trying to bring us to like more positive chat and things like that. But I just want to kind of just take us back, because there'll be people who maybe listen to this. I hope there is people who listen to this and maybe think about like speaking to someone. But can you just give us the kind of signs and symptoms of someone who's maybe got low mental health, Will?
I can only speak from my experience. As I say, kind of mental health, your mental health might manifest itself in different ways. It might be bad mood swings. It might be constantly low mood, low energy, low drive to do things, or it might be hyperactivity. It could be that, like myself, I can reflect back now and I can think that actually my mental health at this point was bad because I was doing I was throwing myself into this one activity constantly, and I was really obsessive about this one thing, or I was removing myself from friends and family and trying to be quite solitary. So that's probably what people could be looking out for. One of the things, to be honest, most of the people that have come to Talk Club have been pushed towards it by their spouses. So I don't know if your podcast is, exclusively listened to by blokes, but if wives, girlfriends, sisters, brothers, anyone, if you've got a friend or a family member who you think actually they might really benefit from a chance to just sit down and chat to someone in an unbiased and confidential way, then that's really what you should be doing, because often the people that are struggling the most are those that are least open to taking that step. But if your friend or your loved one can push you towards it, then that's often more powerful, I think.
100%. From the people that come to the meetings, again, obviously kind of keeping confidentiality and that intact, are these like people that are now you would consider friends from having done these these meetings with on a regular basis for a little bit of time now?
That's a really tricky one, and for me that's one that I kind of struggle with, because some of these guys in particular, they come to the Talk Club because it is anonymous, because they don't know us, so they can come and be open and honest. Do you know what I mean? So like, I like all the guys that come to it. There's a couple of guys that have been to all of them, and some that I've seen really change for the better over the last, so they might have come in on the first day in tears, really anxious, like really not wanting to be there, and now they come every single week and they are more open and more honest. And I remember, like, I've got a terrible memory, but I try and remember specific details about, like, so-and-so's dog is poorly, or so-and-so's daughter is just about to start primary school. And if you can remember that stuff, like, I form connections with these guys, but whether or not I can call them friends is it's tricky, because I don't know where my professional boundary ends, professional boundary in inverted commas, but where my professional boundary ends and where my emotional boundary begins, because I want to be able to hang out with these guys. Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone is coming there for companionship, but like, should it take that next step where you're friends rather than friendly? I don't know. I'm open to it. I'd love to have some friends that I go and do park run and stuff with, but I don't know if I'm allowed.
So I guess it's like a situation where you don't know how the lines can blur, I guess would be the way to put it.
That's true. I mean, the problem is you've lumped all these guys in that have never met each other before, and my role as the kind of the center of this kind of mesh of people is to make sure that everyone gets along. So if I'm friends with one of them and then they have a falling out between them, like, what's my how do I manage the group in an adult and mature way if so and so goes off on one at someone else, especially in that group dynamic when you're all sat around the table. If I'm too friendly with one person, then it means that I don't have the authority to be all right, to say, all right, guys, we're going to leave this now. Thank you for talking, but we need to move on. Like, if they're friendly, they're just like, well, shut up.
So I guess trying to keep bias from coming into it would be the.
Yes, I think being unbiased, being friendly but not friends would probably be my honest answer. But we're still fairly early days with it, and I know that a lot of the talk clubs that are around the country, they might meet up regularly outside of Talk Club. But Talk Club itself has to be separate. It has to be structured. It's not just 8 blokes meeting up and having a blather and kicking a football around. It has to have some kind of structure. So if you want to do something outside of that, then that's fine. Like, yeah, go for it. But the meeting itself has to have kind of a core to it. And at the moment, I have to be that core. Mm-hmm.
Are you would you consider yourself a naturally compassionate person, Will, or is this something that you've managed to build up through your own experience, mental health?
Do you know what? I think I probably am.
Through life.
I think I probably am quite a compassionate person. I think I was quite an emotional kid. I think, I think it's probably come out more so nowadays. Like, rather than just being a bit like I used to get upset if I went to sleepovers when I was a kid. You know, and so I probably was a bit of a wuss when it came to being a child, and then I suppressed that when I was at university.
Trust me, I know the feeling, man. I'm with you.
Right. It's a scary thing when you go for sleepovers. I stand by that. So I think I am probably quite a compassionate person, but I think that Talk Club and I think being mature, like when you're at school, when you're at university, there's all these pressures and these expectations on who you need to be and who you should and shouldn't talk to and how you should act. And then you get older and you're like, fuck it. No one cares. Everyone's living their own life.
Yeah.
Nobody ever grows up to the person they wanted to be when they were 15.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to.
But I want to kind of take it to. I want to ask this question: what kind of impact do you think social media had on society as a whole's mental well-being? Because for me, the way like the people that we've had on, and this is just not even really related to mental health, but we've had athletes on, combat sports athletes on that have talked about having to kind of delete certain like posts from social media to stop comparing themselves to others and things of that nature. And when I was hearing these types of things, I was kind of taken back a little bit, because I suppose I ignorantly, naively thought these people wouldn't be having these thoughts because they do something that 99% of people just wouldn't do, right? Is their career. So, and I suppose that kind of thought process is how a lot of people see other people in relation to status, right? Like, oh, you have this good job, or you have this loving family, or whatever it may be. You can't feel like that, but I suppose it's kind of the age that we're in now, that you never really know how people are kind of feeling deep down, or what kind of struggles outside of what you see in the kind of Instagram post or Facebook post or whatever that's going on, you know?
Yeah, do you know what? We were talking about this. We were talking about this when we were. I've just come back from a filming job in Java, and Java is a beautiful place, but also it's like it's a bit of a shithole in parts. Like, and traveling and living we were filming in a effectively a jungle in a very remote location, and people would message you and you'd be like, oh, you must have been the best time, like traveling life is so good, you must be loving it. And there is this expectation that you should say, yeah, I'm loving it, it's great. But actually, and what you put on social media, right, all the stuff you put on social media is all the golden stuff, the sunrises, the sunsets, the beautiful wildlife, all that kind of stuff. What you don't see is when you get the shits because you've eaten the wrong food, or you don't see the point at which you've been standing in the pouring rain for 40 minutes because the taxi driver dumped you in the wrong place. We don't see that stuff. And that's the same thing with all of our lives. Like, I'm bad with it. I mean, I'm lucky that my brand in inverted commas is kind of me just being a fool. But lots of people, the expectation is like, people don't want to see that. People don't want to see you pissed on a night out in Liverpool. People don't want to see you when you've just broken up with your partner and you're, head first in a bottle of Haagen-Dazs. You don't want to show that stuff. People don't want to see it. But actually, I think what is really good is when people show that true side of themselves, that vulnerability, the fact that we're all going through a bit of a miserable time, and being able to have a bit of humility and having a bit of a laugh about it. Because I think that's one of those things, is that if you can bring humour into dire situations, it really helps. It really helps people discuss it. Anyway, so that's my perspective. And as I say, I work with kids and teenagers all the time. And what I find really scary is that I grew up, and we probably are the last of the generation that grew up without technology. I didn't get a phone until I was 14, 15. And even then I think I got a Nokia brick. But nowadays, from primary school age, kids have got a smartphone, they're Snapchatting and Instagramming and TikToking, and they're scrolling through content constantly that are beautiful men and women doing exotic and fantastic things, and the expectation is, oh, I'm not doing that thing, so I must be doing it wrong. I'm not living on a beach in Bali, I'm not clubbing in a nightclub constantly, so I'm doing it wrong, because this person that's got 1 million followers and 1 million likes is having this fantastic time, and I'm a piece of shit because I am, working in Tesco's or whatever it might be. Do you know what I mean? And I think that is the problem fundamentally. But I don't see it going away. You know,
I think
teen
there's like
suicides on the rise,
the unrealistic
teen anxieties on the rise.
expectations
Oh,
of it.
sorry, there's a crossover here. What are you saying?
No, it's okay. We're keep going. It's just a delay.
Yeah, we are at a stage now where mental health is at an all-time high, particularly in men. I think it's 75% of suicides are through men, and I think that part of that is down to the fact that we compare ourselves constantly. We're constantly pushed with content through all of social media, through TV media as well, like fucking Love Island, Big Brother, all this stuff are beautiful chiseled men. And so when you're sat there with your beer belly on your sofa and you're comparing yourselves to these guys on TV, of course it's only natural that you don't feel like you can compare, that there's something wrong with you because you're not living that life.
Like you mentioned, it's such an unrealistic expectation a lot of the time as well, right? It's the kind of whole, almost like, I don't want to say Disney film kind of analogy, but that's what it is. Like a lot of this stuff isn't just, a lot of people out there that are these kind of creators talk about it. Oh, this is attainable if you just click this link and join this program and whatever kind of goes on in social media. But I suppose there's also the kind of other side of the coin to social media as well, where it gets really toxic a lot of the time, especially on things that people divide over, not to get, into politics, but like a lot of like kind of political stuff you see just divide people down the middle in the comments, and it's like people arguing with people they'll never meet or have never met for the next hour of their life, and it's just not like a good kind of, I don't want to say, yeah, it's not a good environment. It's not a good way to kind of express energy either. And as we've seen from like documentaries like The Social Dilemma, this stuff is actually being targeted because it knows that's what gains engagement, is people getting, for lack of a better term, triggered.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you said that. I was talking about that. I think it was like today we were talking about that there's no such thing as bad interaction. Do you know? So I was watching a YouTube video the other day of a guy that I follow that he makes kooky and silly inventions, and like it's all very light-hearted and silly. But when he writes his captions, he always misspells one word, because the thing that drives interaction with his content is people saying, "You spelt that wrong. You spelt that wrong. You spelt that wrong," and so the algorithm pushes it. Now that's a very like light-hearted way of looking at it. But if you're gonna push content that creates division, that creates discussion, like the algorithm, again in inverted commas, this mystical beast that pushes content to people, that's what drives engagement. That's what pushes it in front of kids. That's what pushes it in front of teenagers and adults. It's not, sometimes social media can be a really powerful source of good. There was that video, The Weller Man Comes, where all these people interacted with this one singer, and it created this beautiful thing where everyone came together. And I love that. I think that's so cool. And it can be a great source for positivity. But I think we're in an environment now where interactions with a piece of content in a negative way perpetuates it further. More people see it. It creates this negative impact on people's lives. I don't know how I wish I could click my fingers and go back to when it was nice and easy and I had my little Nokia phone. But I think we're past the point of no return.
I suppose it came full consumerism, right? Like these interactions, clicks are basically oil now, like they're very, very valuable. And like you said, I kind of miss the old days of what it was like. The worst thing that could happen to you on the internet is getting rickrolled, if anyone remembers that.
Exactly.
or someone writing a cheeky Facebook status or something for you. Sorry, you were saying.
Exactly, yeah. But that is literally the worst it used to get. That's I would take that over some of the stuff I see on social media to this day. You kind of hit the nail on the head earlier on when you were talking about 75% of suicides are male. Will. I actually found a stat earlier on today. I've been doing a little bit of mental health training just now to do with football coaching, and it was 2 people every day in Scotland take their own lives. And that's more than car crashes in this country. Putting that aside, you seem to be somebody who's kind of taken yourself from a darker situation, whatever that situation may be. We've already spoke that mental health is very personal. What would you say are three key aspects to good mental health?
Wow. Three key aspects to mental health.
Just in your own personal experience, how you feel, what you feel are three key aspects, because it's a very broad question, it's a very open question.
I think consistency of, actually I'm going to backtrack, self-awareness. So this giving yourself a figure of 1 to 10, whether that's talking to your friends or family or just mentally checking in with yourself. Because that's the thing, it's about waking up in the morning and thinking, do you know what, today I'm probably at a 4. This morning I slept like crap. I woke up feeling a bit anxious about some things, so I probably checked in mentally at about a 4. And then the next point I would say, second one is consistency. So yes, we run these meetings every other Wednesday, but doing it once every 2 weeks is not enough to build that habit. It needs to be done consistently, and it needs to be supported by your friends and family, and it needs to be instilled. And that's probably my third one, is like teaching others. I'll give you an example. I used to be a coach, right? So when I left competition, I turned to coaching. And I found that the highest rate of improvement of the athletes that I worked with wasn't when I was teaching them, but it was when they were teaching others. So I might teach someone a new technique for doing something, and then I would say, right, I want you to go and teach it to this kid in the year below, let's say. And him going through that mental list of saying, okay, and now you do this, and now you do that, and now you do that, not only helped the kid below, but also helped him because he's ingraining that. So I would say that mentally checking in with yourself, doing it consistently, and passing it on and talking to other people and encouraging other people to do it, just like you and I did when we started this call and we all checked in. Yeah, those would be my three.
Great answer. Really good.
Do I feel like
So we've kind of covered social media. I want to go to the other. So I kind of wanted to go to the other side of the kind of spectrum when it comes to mental health. So we've kind of talked about social media and the internet and all these types of things, but I know you're an outdoor instructor and stuff like that. I wanted to ask about how you feel, how important you feel like nature and getting out in nature and stuff like that, how much of a benefit that can be to mental health. Because I was someone that went on like a training course with I'm trying to remember the group's name. I think it was called Nature for Health. Mm-hmm. And we went on like this kind of day out to the woods and whatever. I always feel awkward saying that. It's not something that you come out and say, is it? But going out to the woods, and it was only when I got back from that I was like, there was a lot of kind of like serenity and peace and calm, because we live in a world that is like full 100 miles an hour a lot of the time, with information in our face with the phone and, jobs and public, getting from place to place and all this type of stuff. It is nice to just kind of take a step back and kind of refocus everything, being out in, the natural habitat for humans, really.
Yeah, that's, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. I think it's very fashionable, especially post-COVID, and people are much more aware of how being outside can impact their mental health. When we couldn't go outside because we were stuck in for COVID, like everyone pined for that outdoor experience. And now, you see the number of businesses that have come up that are offering outdoor experiences, forest bathing or whatever, or wild swimming is like, everyone does wild swimming nowadays. Now, I should say that Nature for Health, I know the guys that run that, and they do a fantastic job. And I think that anything that gets people outside and moving in a natural environment is so good. I think sometimes people feel like it's like out their comfort zone to just be in the woods. And I agree that we're constantly bombarded with information, and like I'm awful at it because I run my own business, because I'm a photographer. Like I have to be, or at least I feel like I have to be, on my phone, replying to emails, looking at Instagram, all of that crap, and actually consciously leaving my phone behind and going to go and do something in the woods, take my camera out, take photos, look for wildlife. That's a really grounding thing for me, because when your phone's not there, like the world, if you get an email and you don't immediately reply to it, the world doesn't stop. If someone doesn't like a photo that you've just posted on Instagram, the world doesn't stop. And so last night, my girlfriend and I, we went out to go and look for beavers. Sounds very wholesome. Went to go look for beavers at a local river. And we were sitting, beavers come out at night and you just got to do a lot of sitting and hoping that they turn up. And I find myself, like when I'm sat still, the temptation to just reach for my phone is constant, is all the time. Like, I'm just going to check, just going to check and see if, because we're all craving that dopamine hit. But then when you're like in nature, in inverted commas, like suddenly you don't have that capability. So I close my eyes and I try and count the number of different sounds that are going on around me. I fiddle with things. So I'm always fiddling with bits of grass and things like that. And I think that's like, I think that resonates with me because that's how I was when I was a kid. That was what I did. I went out and got muddy and mucked around in the woods. And I think that's something that we forget about doing when we're an adult. I think it's something that we need to do more. I think it's something we need to do more. And I think it's something we need to do more with our kids. Because kids these days, like, they don't do that. At least not to my reckoning. They don't go out and jump in rivers and go and get super mucky. And I think that adults, we're really bad at doing it ourselves. You know, we're really bad with being muddy. We're really bad with being cold. And I think it's something that really helps me, and from experience really helps other people.
Definitely has, from like the last 10 years, been a wave. Like, I think technology's been on the rise for like a good kind of 30, 20 years, but the computerization of the phone is definitely the thing that's made the gap kind of appear between virtual and reality, right? Like, in terms of a lot of people were meeting like this over COVID and stuff like that, and there's like a firewall there, isn't there? It's just not the same as being in person or having an experience. Like, seeing like a YouTube video is not the same as actually going to travel somewhere and seeing it in person and stuff like that. So I just wanted to kind of not get away from the mental health stuff, but I actually, when we were kind of corresponding in the lead up to this, you were mentioning that you're a wildlife photographer and a filmmaker. And I actually came across your page on social media, and I just wanted to say that like some of the stuff, like some of the shots and some of the videos you get are proper breathtaking. As someone that does like editing themselves and has kind of dipped their toe in the works of like documentary work and stuff like that as well, I kind of geek out a little bit and have to ask people what kind of editing software they're using and what kind of setups they have and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay, so is this you asking me what I'm shooting on and what I'm editing with? Are we going down a photography route?
Yeah. What do you use to edit? What do you use to color correct? I want the whole shebang, my friend. Okay,
so I shoot on a Sony A7 IV, with I tend to shoot on a 200 to 600 millimeter lens, not going down too much technical stuff, but I'm much more like the run and gun style filming. I'd love to have like a big rig shoulder mounted camera, the kind of thing they get on, Planet Earth, but I can't afford it on my budget. So I have a little DSLR, an expensive, but a nice DSLR, and I do all of my shooting on that. When it comes to photography, I edit on a program called Capture One. Most people tend to use Lightroom or Photoshop. I learned photography on a Fujifilm camera, and files that come off Fuji, like, they don't agree with Lightroom. So someone pointed me in the direction of Capture One, and then I've used Capture One ever since. To be honest, I probably should use Lightroom because Capture One sometimes doesn't behave itself, but I'm kind of too far down that rabbit hole now, so I just use Capture One for everything. In terms of filming editing software, I bit the bullet and I paid about £300 for Final Cut. But everything I did, all of my photography and all of my video stuff is all self-taught. I learned photography through YouTube during COVID, and I learned videography kind of post-COVID, and I'm still learning it as I go on now. But YouTube is, you're talking about stuff that you going out and having real world experiences. Like, I cannot sing the praises high enough for YouTube. I've learned so many useless facts and so much useless information from it.
I heard someone describe it as the biggest university that's ever been made, and it's so true, because I can relate to a lot of what you're just saying there about learning the actual kind of stuff that you would 10 years ago you would have to go to university to learn about this stuff, or you would have to go to some sort of course where like there's just endless amounts of information of whatever you need to look up in that. So I think that is definitely the positive side of the internet, like being accessing such new skills.
The problem is that anyone can put stuff onto YouTube. You know, like you might get for every fantastic video, you might have some idiot that's told you totally the wrong thing. But you're right; it is a really powerful tool. And that's one of those things, you know, there is a marrying, linking it back to what you're talking about with going out into nature.
I've just got one more question before we end off. We used...
Sorry, there was a delay there.
In there again, has it?
That's a delay there. I've got one more thing to link back to what you were saying about nature and social media. There is a link there between how you can bring technology into an outdoor environment, as I see it, in like a healthy way. So there are you know, bird watching apps. There are bushcraft apps. There are community groups that will help educate you. Even things like Pokemon Go, you know, like going out and being active and running around and exploring your world. Even if it's in a digital way, you are still interacting with the world. So it doesn't have to be so scary as like going out into the woods by yourself and camping if you've never done that before. There's like a middle ground. At least that's how I see it. You know, like when I take kids out who've never listened to birdsong before, I'll get them to fire up their app and look for that particular bird and learn what that particular bird sounds like from their app. So anyway, I digress, but I think there is a halfway house between the two.
Most definitely. I think there's obviously an evolution in there. Like we have to use modern solutions to modern problems. I'm pretty sure that's actually the start of a meme. So it's a true nonetheless. So I've actually got one more question, and then we end off on a question each for every guest that we have on. So the last question I have is, if there's anyone that's going to listen to this, watch this, whether it be now or down the line, that's either went through a hard time previously, is maybe going through a hard time now, why in your mind is it so important for men to talk about these types of issues and what's going on for them at the time?
I grew up in a environment where it was frowned upon to discuss your emotions. It was frowned upon for boys to cry. It was frowned upon for boys to ask for a hug if they're feeling miserable. I don't want the next generation, whether that's my kids or any kids, to grow up in an environment like that. And if I'm not willing to discuss my emotions and to be emotionally intelligent enough to talk about that, then who's going to do that? Do you know what I mean? Like, I have got to set the example for the next generation. I go out all the time teaching kids, and I've tried doing this, like How Are You Out of 10 with kids. And they do it, you know, they do pick up on it. But if I'm not going to do it, then who else is? We have to set that example to the next generation of kids, because I don't want my kids to grow up in an environment where they can't talk about their emotions.
100%. Well, before we get into the final two questions, thank you very much for the hour of your time. It's actually been a really honest and authentic chat, right? Sometimes we get a bit not hesitant to ask questions, but we don't want to like put people on the spot or offend anyone. But like, I think it's good that we kind of just go for it sometimes. We just see what happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I make up most of it anyway.
Yeah. But so we kind of end off on two questions that are kind of on either side of the spectrum of this kind of thing, I would say. So for me, I always ask, what is the one thing in your life that you overthink the most? Sorry.
I'm having a pause here. I overthink money a lot. I worry about not having enough money, not being able to do the things that I want to do because I don't have enough money. And I overthink what I should be doing with my life. Do you know, like whatever decision I make, I feel like that's the wrong one, or what if I'd made that other choice, rather than just living in the now and being happy with what I'm doing at the moment.
And my question is, and I'm going to change this question slightly because I've been thinking about this the last couple of weeks. Can you give me the one thing, Will, that's not a person that makes you the happiest?
I would say being out in nature in a challenging environment. before this winter, I did a couple of winter mountain days up in the Cairngorms, and like being cold and hungry and having done a really hard bit of exercise and getting down into your sleeping bag at the end of the day, like that is me at my absolute happiest. I could not be happier when there's like wind and snow and all that howling around me. Like that's my happy place.
Wow. Maniac.
I had a question for you guys, if that's all right. I was going to ask you, like we do at the end of talk.
100%. Flip the tables on us. Go for it.
Would you guys be
like
happy
this.
to give me a check-in at the end? Are you still feeling like you're at a 6 and a 4?
Do you know what?
And what are you going to do
like
to work on?
improves-
What are you going to do to help yourself mentally or physically over the next week? And what are you grateful for? Those are my big 3.
Okay, do you want to go first again, or will we?
Yeah, I'll go first. I'm up to about an 8. Regardless of like the circumstance or the person, podcasting always makes me feel a bit better, and I think that is just because we're talking. You know, we're getting things out there. It could be the most random of subjects on the podcast, but because I'm down here and with one of my good friends, you know, we're chatting. It makes you feel better. Sorry, what was your second question, Will?
What are you grateful for?
I think it was.
And what are you going to do to work on your mental or physical health over the next week?
I'm grateful for, with the way the world is just now, just having a secure job, having a roof over my head, having a bit of time to spend with my family, and over the next week, tomorrow I actually start a new coaching role down at Elgin City Football Club.
See you there.
And next week I'm away for 3 days for a caravan holiday with my partner and my youngest son. So yeah, it's going to be a good couple of days away to clear the head and just have some good family time.
Fantastic.
So I would say that it's improved as well. I always find that I get really kind of nervous coming into these things. I think it's almost like, I always use the analogy, it's like being sick. The build-up is always more intense than the actual kind of event. You know, like I'm always convinced I'm going to mess up somehow or whatever. But I would say that I'm probably about a 7, 8. I feel like as things go along, everything becomes more natural. And by the end of it, like I prove to myself again, like nothing catastrophic happened. In terms of what I'm going to do to improve my mental health and physical health over the next week is mentally, I've just kind of started up a new business. And I, you know, as I mentioned at the start, I'm someone that kind of tends to always half glass empty. Is that half empty glass?
Yeah.
Side of things. And for ages I've put this off because I'm like, I don't think I can do this. I'm going to mess this up somehow. And for the last couple of weeks, I've actually been saying to myself, I'm the best at what I do, and this is going to work. So I'm going to keep doing that and make sure that I actually back myself rather than try and put myself down. And physically, I need to get back into doing stuff like push-ups and stuff like that because I've really been slacking recently. So as someone that used to be morbidly obese, I get paranoid when I leave it for a few weeks. So
What are you grateful for?
And what am I grateful for? Resilience, my resilience. I've been through a little bit in my life, so I'm still here and still pushing forward and still challenging myself and things of that nature. So I'm very grateful for that. That I get nervous doing things, but it doesn't stop me from doing them.
And how about yourself, Will? Can we're just going to keep firing back the question to you. You know.
Well, I reckon you put me. This interview's put me at a solid 9. It's been great chatting to you guys. This is the first kind of. I'm still working on being able to like open up about this stuff, and being able to open up to a forum and a couple of guys that have different backgrounds and whole different stories to their lives is just a pleasure. So yeah, I reckon possibly even a 10, although I always say that it's never attainable to be a 10, But anyway, I'd say a 9 or a 10. What am I grateful for? I've got a loving girlfriend, a loving family. The sun is coming out, and I've got a good filming project that I'm part of at the moment. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I'm able to run and walk around and move without aching all the time. That's good. And I think, what am I going to work on mentally and physically? I've got a stressful block over the next couple of weeks. Just a lot of different projects and work going on. So I'm going to make sure that I've got time to check in with the people that I need to check in with, and make sure that I give myself time, because I'm my own worst enemy. Like, if I've got projects, I want to constantly be doing them. And if I'm not doing them, I'm stressed because I'm not doing them. So I'm going to make sure that I give myself, a couple of hours a day off if I can, to have time to myself and kind of look after myself as well.
Awesome, man. Well, this has been thoroughly enjoyable. Yeah. When you're back, we're gonna have to get you on in studio down the line, because we actually do have a studio, which we joked for ages that we had a studio that wasn't actually a studio, but now we have a studio that is a studio.
Yeah,
it would be good to have you on in person at some point. But yeah, this has been really enjoyable, man.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries at all, mate. And I'm keen to get more of the wildlife stuff and the nature stuff next time if we do get you back on, Will, because I'm not going to lie, I didn't know that about yourself. So
mate, you can
see the amount of people we get on with. They've just got so many avenues.
All things wildlife, and yeah, I'd love to chat about all things nature and wildlife if you ever need that.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Before we go, we have to do the whole corporate stuff.
Well, I think before we do the corporate stuff, I think we should do a little bit for mental health.
Oh, of course, yeah. So how can someone get in touch with yourself? Could someone get in touch with yourself beforehand if they were thinking of coming to a meeting and maybe wanted to have a couple of questions asked or
your best bet is
answered
to
or
try and
whatever?
get in touch with me through you can Facebook Will Hall. I'm always on, or Will Hall Wildlife is like my business one, because there's probably more than one Will Hall. If you want to get in touch with Talk Club, you can go to wetalkclub.org. And check out, if I don't know where your podcast gets picked up from, but Talk Club is all over the country. Elgin was the first one in Scotland, but they are all over the UK. So yeah, your best bet is to look online and see. They even do online talk clubs. So if you're not able to come to a meeting in person, or you don't want to because you're a bit nervous, they do a weekly online as well. But the guys there that run it are so friendly, they're so open, they've all been through the ringer as well. So your best bet is to go through that. If you want to come to the local one, the one in Elgin, you can contact me, Will Hall, through Facebook, Instagram, like anything like that. You can find me on Google, and you'll probably find my number somewhere on there as well, although I need to remove it.
Fantastic. We'll also put out that, if there's anyone listening to this podcast that thinks, even just looking at the northeast corner, message us. We're willing to listen. I've also written down Samaritans 116123. If anyone actually feels like there is no one else to turn to and you're at that point in your life, I think we're going to link a lot of the things in the description as well, because obviously it's a massively important topic. But yeah, once again, thank you very much for your time, Will.
I should just say as well, sorry to
so before we go
on there, but Talk Club is not the only place people can turn to. You've got Samaritans, Mikey's Line, Man's Club, I think it's called as well. Like
breathing space and stuff like that.
Man's Space,
as well.
exactly. There's an environment now, and it's not like you can't join our club if you've joined other clubs. Your mental health is a place for you to work on.
It's not a gang.
Yeah, exactly. So if Talk Club isn't for you, or if you feel like you need to work on it, don't feel like you are alone. There are loads of places, and I wish I knew this sooner. I wish I had the guts to go and chat to people about this, but there are loads of places to turn to if people need to.
So I will get to the corporate stuff in a second, but I just think it's also good to say congratulations on actually being someone that's took the initiative on this, right? Because I think a lot of people say that they would like to do something like this, but then never actually follow through with it. So I think the fact that you've actually went out there and did it, and that you're actually helping people in the local area, is a really, really positive thing. So much appreciated from community standpoint as well. Now to the corporate stuff, I will have to turn to the camera that is on us in the other side of the room. For anyone listening on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and all the platforms that we're on, 5-star review, takes 2 seconds, helps us out in the algorithm, and it helps more local people see the show. As we were talking about, the algorithm is a cruel mistress that sometimes goes in our favor and sometimes doesn't. And we will see you for episode 96, whenever that may be.